I'm Paul Duchesne, and welcome to Mama Paul in the Kitchen. It's Wednesday morning, January 20th, and California time right now. It's very early in the morning for me, and probably the best news in 4 years is that Donald will be leaving Washington in probably about 5 hours or less. So that's the best news I've heard in 4 years, and let's move on from there and consider it a good day today. Last week I gave a brief history of my dietary obsession over the last 50 years, starting with macrobiotics and ending up with food combining and Ayurvedics. And just recently, just past week in fact, there was an interesting little article in the paper about the Mediterranean diet, how it was the best diet for 2021. And in the article they mentioned a half a dozen other diets, including the DASH diet, never heard of that. The Dukin diet, D-U-K-I-N, never heard of that one. A keto, which I suspect is a paleo heavy meat eating diet that doesn't do too many carbohydrates. They mentioned a flexitarian diet, which is a vegetarianism with a little meat thrown in. They mentioned the Ornish diet, and that was a diet actually developed out here in the valley by Dean Ornish, who worked for quite a few kitchens right around here and also out of Sausalito, and worked at the University of California developing a heart-friendly diet back in the 80s. Quite a really good diet and a lot of sensible work done. The Mediterranean diet, which they talk about, if you look at the Ayurvedic diet from India and the Mediterranean diet from Europe, there's a lot of similarities, and in both cases they're emphasizing increasing plant-based eating, plant-based foods, less processed foods, less red meat, not so much dairy. The Indians more so dairy, the Europeans less so dairy. So there's a lot of similarities and a lot of common ground here. Now I've gone from, like I said, macrobiotics to, well, a little raw food in the middle there, and this Ayurvedic thing. In Ayurvedic medicine and the dietary regimens, it's actually 5,000-year-old system. So it's not didn't just come around in the last week or so. It's been around 5,000 years, and within it, people get classified as either being Kapha, Pitta, or Vata, and this is your body type and whether you're heavy set or thin or whether you're wiry. So I'm a Pitta type. I'm wiry and thin. And I can eat, 3 times as much as people, twice my weight, and not gain weight. It's been like that all my life. So that's one part of this thing. The food combining actually came out of the Ayurvedic diet. Now it's a little different with a Western approach to it, but it actually came out of the whole Ayurvedic diet. And the interesting thing, I did a little research this week on it, seeing that I talked about it so much, and I've been eating this way. Well, I don't really totally eat this way. Okay, I cheat a lot. I talked about how diet basically said have a fruit salad in the morning, and then you follow it with a salad and a vegetable, and a protein-centric meal, salad and a vegetable, and a carbohydrate-centric meal. So you don't mix the meat and potatoes together at the meal, the only exception being rice and fish. It generally works for me, but I don't follow it most of the time. I do the fruit salad in the morning, and I do 2 salads during the day. So I've increased my intake of raw food, and that's the big thing for me. I never used to like salads, and I was eating macrobiotically, and macrobiotically you were cooking everything. I think I mentioned this last week. Even salads, they would press the lettuce. So introducing more raw foods has definitely been a healthy move. So I'm a real mixture of a lot of different kind of dietary regimens that I've developed over the years. And as I said, I eat 2 decent-sized salads a day, and that's the basis of my whole diet. Now, the food combining, I did some research, and evidence-based examples of food combining was a big, long article, about 19 pages. And they said here, in fact, there is no evidence to support most of the supposedly scientific principles of food combining. Okay. 9 pages later, a new bottom line says, the principles of food combining diets are not evidence-based. However, there are a few food combinations that have been scientifically shown to affect the digestion and absorption of nutrients. you would notice, I would notice, I eat a late meal. I eat dinner around 10 o'clock at night, and I go to bed 2 to 4 in the morning. And if I don't have, if I eat a complex meal at night, I need to have a 3-4 hour break before I go to bed at night. And it's real noticeable for me. If I have a less complex meal, I can go to bed within, say, 2 hours. If I mix the protein and carbohydrates, I mostly do. If I'm going to have chicken, I prefer to have it with potatoes or a pasta. I like the combination. And most breakfasts, I do bacon and eggs, ham and eggs. Not all the time, but quite a few. So I cheat a lot in these diets. I have my own system. But the big thing is I put more salads in, more raw foods in, and the salad we made last week was, I showed you whoops, got it here. This was the topping that we put on, using as the kale crunch as the base, and that was a topping on the salad. And let's get to the bigger screen here, and we'll get the stuff off of here. And what we're going to do is, I eat, the salad is in 3 parts. I got the hard vegetables, the green vegetables, and the topping. The hard vegetables that I use are red peppers, fennel, and celery. The reason these are already cut in half, all 3 are actually cut in half, is it's the second time we're doing the show today. I did the show about 8 hours ago, and that little newspaper article about the Mediterranean diet, I put up on the screen and forgot to take it off for the entire show. So we're doing the whole thing over. So I was going to suggest that I was going to make a smaller salad this week, so therefore I cut them in half. So that's why they're in half like that. These are cooling vegetables. In Ayurvedic medicine, these are cooling vegetables, and I, as a Pitta type, run hot. I used to eat a lot of garlic and a lot of onions. And in fact, a day without garlic was a day without sunshine. I developed these canker sores from the stress of working on this Twinkie project years ago. And somebody, an Ayurvedic practitioner, pointed out that I was a Pitta type, that these foods were increasing the heat in my whole system, and that if I replaced them with cooling foods, I'd improve my condition. And I tried it immediately. Immediately I went out and I got fennel, red peppers, and celery. Nothing I was too crazy about other than the red peppers. Fennel I wasn't too crazy about at all. And I started to use these as a base, added the greens, and over time I've gotten, it's really a delicious combination. If you have something that's a little bit too bitter and you balance it with something that's blander, they come together sometimes, and this whole combination comes together for me. So this works for me, and what I'm going to just do is, well, just chop it up here. So, like I said, I already cut these in half earlier. So I get the end off with the little fuzz and everything over there, and I'll take out the core center piece also. And, you know what, I'm going to start cutting the fennel right now, but why don't I show you the knife sharpening before we do that. I have the knife out, and I meant to do this. I did it earlier. I just inherited this stone. I just recently inherited this stone from my German baker who worked with me on the Twinkie project years ago. And I've always used one of these cheapo to sharpen my knife, and they really don't work as well as a stone does. And I really hadn't done this before, and I had to look it up on YouTube to find out how to really do it properly. Wet the stone, put the blade on the stone, lay it down, and lift the blade up at about a 15 to 20 degree angle, and then bring it straight down and up like so like a J. So you're sort of making a little J with it. And I don't know if that's totally right, but if you know, and you're seeing this, and I'm doing it wrong, let me know. So we're going to do the same thing in the other direction. Now we'll go down a J, down a J, J, and so you can do this a little longer and get a sharper edge. But that was just to show you what I sort of felt like I learned this last week or two. This was the article that was in the newspaper, the Sunday Times, about sharpening the stones. So that's what sort of brought it to the head. This is a blade And this is actually probably as old as I am. It's probably about in the 70s. This was my father's. And you don't really sharpen it. What you do is you sort of buff it up. It just buffs it up. After you've done it with the stone, there might be a little shavings there, and you'll do this, and this will buff it up. And if you're working in the kitchen for a while and you don't want to sharpen the stone, you can give it a few hits, and it'll bring the edge of the edge back on the knife. This is a Woodstoff. It's a Woodstoff with a vegetable blade. I've been using this knife over 10 years. It's a gorgeous, well-made German knife, very nice. When I do the red peppers, I like to get the white out of there. I'm not crazy about the white little flesh, and I'll cut it down into a dozen or so nice little strips. Don't quite crazy about the white. And when you're working with the knife, you want to make sure that you have your fingers like this, so that the blade is going to hit your knuckles and not your fingertips. Then you won't have any fingers left. And if you're knocking off when you're knocking vegetables off the chopping block, the back of the knife, not the front of the knife. Use the front of the knife, you'll chip the blade up. All right. So we'll just dice these up, about little bite-sized pieces, and we'll put them into little bowls over here. Empty bowl. The bowl is empty. It's the magician here. We're going to have a magic act. We got that. We'll do the celery. Get rid of the end. And depending on how thick the celery is, I generally go just one down the middle. But if it's a thicker piece like this was, I'll give it 2 shots. I don't know whether I'm holding the knife right or not on the end. I've noticed that I'm holding it closer and closer to the blade. And I don't know if it's a bad habit I've developed or you're supposed to do it. I'm not a chef. I create foods now and then. I work with food a lot, but I'm not a chef. So I took out the little core center from the fennel. And the fennel is really interesting because we're cutting it sort of the same way, make nice little slices, and then we'll turn them around and dice them the other way. And it's really interesting because that licoricey kind of smell that fennel has, it's like licorice, it's just oozing out of it. And when you cut vegetables, the ends get real. You're exposing them to air, and the whole thing gets oxidized, and the juices and the moisture that's in there is seeping out. And so the food which is why raw food is so different than cooked food. There's more enzymes in the raw food, and the enzymes are good for digestion and everything. And the more of these things you eat, the more you will lose weight, be healthy, have a good digestive system, all the good things that go with a good diet. And if you make things so that you do this once a week, you won't feel oppressed with the whole deal. So I got little vegetables in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put them in this container, nice clear container, I like clear containers. I like to see what's in things. When you're in the kitchen and I'm in the refrigerator, if it's in a clear container, I can see what it is, I know what it is, and I'll wind up using it more readily. Also, you don't want to have a lot of airspace in containers. The more airspace you have, the more things oxidize. The more things oxidize, the more you lose their nutritional value. Okay, there's the hard vegetables. So we've got the hard vegetables. We've got the topping we're going to put on, and the last thing we're going to do is the greens. So I just cleaned this out a little bit. I've got a couple of greens here that are in the plastic containers, which I talked about last week. Not crazy about, but what are you going to do? Pandemic has cleaned up the air in some places and made things worse in other places. This is from Organic Girl down in Watsonville, and the plastic is recycled, 100% recycled plastic, so that's good. And this is a combination. I get the 50-50 of the spring mix and the baby spinach. And the spring mix are these baby lettuces, these arugulas, these 2 or 3 or 4 different types of lettuces what are they don't actually identify them here, or maybe they do. A little red chard, maybe green chard, red oak leaf, quite a few different combinations here. These little baby lettuces, I mentioned this last week, these were developed as a commercial product back in the mid-80s out in Bolinas by Warren Weber. 1985, I think, he came out with the first salad mixes like this, and they originally sold in the mid-80s for $9 a pound, which seemed high at the time compared to the other lettuces. And over time, this is now 85, 95, 30 years later, they're still selling for about the same price. So what's happened is the supply has increased incredibly. So I put a nice big handful of the mixed lettuces and the baby spinach, and I'll use maybe about a third of my container of sunflower sprouts. I really like sunflower sprouts. They're just loaded with nutritional energy. You can feel it especially in sunflower sprouts. They just have a sort of magic to them. Last week I had radicchio, that purple shaped. I've got dandelion this week. Dandelion, I've already clipped the end off so it's not leafy like it was. Really bitter. All by itself, you might make a soup out of this. But when you mix a little bit into these really nice, sweeter kinds of greens, you get a good end result. And that's what you're looking for, a good end result. So I think that's enough. That's enough of there. That's a good chunk. And we'll give it another little, I really like this smaller, something like, not quite like parsley, but definitely smaller than the first chopping I gave it. So we'll go here, put the blade this way on the wood. I'm using it not into the wood. Okay, so here's the three of them mixed there. I'll sort of mix them all together, and then I'll put them in one of these little nylon clear vegetable bags. Got a lot of these around. They're real handy with if you're going to deal with vegetables, and I deal with a lot of vegetables and salads, as you can see from what we're talking about. So there we go. Okay, so we've got the greens, we got the heart, and we got the topping. And all I need is a dish to put them on. I'll get a dish. And I'm off screen for a moment, and I apologize for that. So a nice dish. And why don't we just get a nice little handful of the greens over here, and then we'll put another nice little handful of the hard vegetables across, a little more maybe. Okay, and beautiful. I mean, is that? And we're going to sprinkle the magic dressing on top. Now normally what I would have on top of this, I would have some cucumber and some jicama. And I forgot to get the cucumber last night at the store when I went shopping. And the jicama looks, mashugana, I'll tell you. It's, I cut a piece earlier, and the piece I had last week looked real nice, but as soon as I cut into it, it had a lot of black spots in it. So I think it's early in the season. This is the first jicama that I've seen in like 3 months, so it obviously is a new, and it didn't look great. So I cut into it, there were some black spots in there. I didn't like it at all, I just sort of let it go. So I forgot about it this week. What I would do on top of that is the olive oil and fresh pepper and olive oil. I gave a little add for the olive oil I had last week, and this week I picked up a San Giuliano, and it's a extra virgin, 100% organic from Italy. So this is a fifth, 750 milliliters, and this is, I've had this before, it is yummy, nice little spice to it. So I have it in this, I keep a counter jar that I use with the Easy Pour spout. Pepper is really good for you. For years I thought that black pepper was an irritant, it wasn't really a great thing to use. Well, if it's in a shaker, it's a terrible thing to use. If it's already ground up in a shaker and you're going salt and pepper, that pepper has absolutely no nutritional value. You know, when I cut the vegetables and they start to oxidize, well, you take a pepper ball, and you grind it up, and as soon as you grind it up, it's starting to oxidize. So, you can smell the oils in the pepper right now. This is the way you want to have it. You want to grind that pepper, freshly ground. The oils are fresh, the oils are alive. It acts as a healing agent on your intestines. When the pepper is shakeable out, and it was already ground up, 6 months ago or 4 years ago, it still tastes like pepper. It has a peppery, it'll make you sneeze probably, but it has no nutritional value, and it acts as an irritant in your intestines. It literally acts as an irritant, whereas freshly ground pepper heals that irritation. With creams that people put on to clear up skin problems and stuff, a lot of those creams have capsicum in them, and capsicum is red pepper. Hello? So the ingredients in pepper are really good for healing, but you want to use it freshly ground. I think we covered it, and if there's any interest, maybe we can talk more about these other aspects of some of these dietary regimens. Other than that, I have a couple of different dishes I wanted to make. I do a really terrific mock corned beef and hash using buckwheat groats. I have a sensational medicinal mushroom dish that I've integrated into a nice green vegetable thing. If I get further down the road, the brown rice sandwiches that I made years ago as a commercial venture, we could do that, and that would be a fun thing to do. That might be a few weeks. And maybe at the end of the trip here, maybe we can get in the kitchen here and make some organic Twinkies even. Holy mackerel. Anyway, welcome to a new world. January 20th, 2021. A new world is happening, hopefully. Peace, patience, and persistence. I'm going to try to cut it off and not do it.